All right, welcome to The Explainer, where we break down big ideas. And today we are tackling a big one of the most powerful and honestly misunderstood concepts out there, unconditional love.
Now, this quote is about motherhood, but that feeling she's describing, it's totally universal. It's that deep human ache for a love that feels like a safety net, right? A place where you're just completely accepted and you can feel grounded and safe no matter what.
And you know, this whole quest for unconditional love, it's not some new idea. It's this enduring ideal, something we've held up as the purest, most selfless kind of affection for centuries, across all kinds of philosophy and spiritual traditions. So what is it really? At its core, we're talking about a love that's given freely, no strings attached. It's an affection that doesn't depend on what you do or what happens. It just is. It's this total acceptance of another person, warts and all. The ancient Greeks, well, they really thought a lot about this stuff. They didn't just have one word for love, they had a bunch. You had eros, which was that passionate romantic desire. Then there was philia, the deep love between friends. But one of their concepts, agape, gets really close to what we think of today. And that concept is agape. This is seen as the highest form of love. It's selfless, it's universal, it's not just some passing feeling, it's a conscious choice, an act of will, to want the best for other people, even your enemies. Okay, so that's a beautiful, really compelling spiritual idea, right? But what happens when we try to take that divine, selfless concept and jam it into the messy, complicated reality of our actual human relationships? Well, this is where things get interesting, and a really powerful critique comes into play. All right, let's dive right into that counterargument, the one that says this ideal of unconditional love isn't some noble goal at all, but actually a dangerous myth, especially when we're talking about our intimate relationships. And yeah, you'll hear relationship experts like Matthew Hussey say exactly that. He argues that when you take this idea literally, it can be incredibly damaging. It goes from being this beautiful, romantic thing to a potential trap. So, how exactly does it do harm? Well, this is where it gets kind of scary. The whole ideal can backfire because it creates this expectation that you have to tolerate anything, disrespect, neglect, even abuse, all under the banner of love is unconditional. It just strips away accountability and can leave you feeling guilty for even having needs and boundaries. It's a recipe for trapping people in some really unhealthy situations. So the key here, the absolute crucial point, is that this whole problem comes from confusing two very different things, the feeling of love and the contract of a relationship.
And this quote just nails the misunderstanding. Spiritual teacher Teal Swan points out that when we say we want unconditional love, what we're really saying is we want an unconditional relationship, a partnership where our actions have zero consequences. And I mean, come on, that's just not possible. It's not even something we should want.
And that is the key distinction right there. Look, you can absolutely hold unconditional love for someone in your heart, that internal state of goodwill, wishing them the best even if you're not in their life anymore. But a healthy relationship, that's a partnership, that's a team effort. And it absolutely, 100% requires conditions to work. You need mutual respect, trust, safety, accountability. Those are the ground rules.
So let's go a little deeper into the shadow side of this. Let's see how this one misunderstanding can spiral into some really dysfunctional, toxic patterns.
Because when you pursue this idea of unconditional love without any boundaries, it can slide right into what we call codependency. You know, that's where one person's entire identity gets wrapped up in sacrificing themselves for the other person, often at their own expense.
And a lot of the time, this looks like enabling. That twisted idea of unconditional love becomes the perfect excuse for behaviors that actually hurt everyone. You're shielding someone from the consequences of their actions, which means they never have a reason to change, and the cycle of harm just keeps going.
Okay, so if this common ideal we all hear about is so flawed, what's the alternative? Where do we go from here? Well, it looks like the answer is to totally shift our perspective on what love even is.
And the solution seems to be reframing the whole thing. Unconditional love isn't some magical feeling that just happens to you, something you find or fall into. No, it's an active, disciplined practice. It's a skill you build, a capacity you choose to cultivate inside yourself every single day.
Spiritual teacher B.K. Shivani puts it beautifully. She says the practice is all about an internal shift. You've got to move away from having this long list of expectations for how other people should act, and instead shift to a state of acceptance for who they are.
Now, this doesn't mean you approve of bad behavior. It just means you stop letting their actions destroy your own inner peace.
And a huge part of this is something called detachment with love. Now, I know what you're thinking. That sounds cold, right? But it's so often misunderstood. It's not about being indifferent or pushing someone away. It's about building up your own inner stability so that someone else's emotional chaos doesn't automatically become your emotional chaos. And here's the crazy part. That actually lets you be more present and helpful because you're not getting sucked into the drama.
And you know, we actually have a roadmap for this from ancient wisdom traditions. The Buddhist practice of Metta, or loving-kindness meditation, gives you a super concrete, step-by-step way to do this. And notice where it starts. It starts with you. First, you have to generate that compassion for yourself. Only then do you start extending it outward, to people you love, then to neutral people, then, and this is the tough one, to difficult people, and finally to all beings everywhere.
So when you put it all together, this more mature approach to love is really just a practical toolkit. And the number one non-negotiable tool in that kit is unconditional self-love. That's the foundation. From there, you build with mindfulness, so you can actually understand what you're feeling. And then you add the crucial and brave art of setting healthy boundaries by communicating clearly and assertively.
So look at the journey we've been on. We started with this simple, romantic, maybe even a little naive ideal, and we've landed at a much more robust, more practical understanding of love. Mature love, it turns out, isn't about blind acceptance. It's about integrating a wide-open, compassionate heart with a smart, discerning mind.
And that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. What if the real goal isn't to wander around hoping to find this perfect, unconditional love that will magically fix everything? What if the real, life-changing quest is to commit to practicing a wiser, a more bounded, and a more courageous love? For ourselves and for others every single day.